No, we're already recording. Perfect. All right. So we're going to get started. It is 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You are joining us for our workshop this evening, utilizing your study abroad experience for your college common application. And tonight's presentation is brought to you by CIEE's first year abroad and gap year team. So our agenda for tonight, I'll introduce myself, talk a little bit about CIEE, and then I'm going to jump in to our topic for the evening. I'm also going to give you a brief overview of our pre-college programs in case you're interested in studying abroad before you matriculate onto your college or university. And then I'll save time at the end of the evening for any questions that you might have. This is an interactive presentation. You can drop questions in the chat. You can come off of mute. You know, it's not meant to just be me talking at you. So at any point you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or come off of mute. Just going to make sure everyone has access, and we do. All right, so here we go. So a little bit about me. My name is Emily Gutierrez. I am the enrollment manager for first year abroad in our gap year programs at CIEE. I'm a former teacher. I've helped 10 cohorts of students apply for their college applications. And I'm really excited to be here this evening to talk to you about how to really discuss your study abroad experience to make you stand out as a college applicant. Also on our team is Ariel. She's not on the call tonight. She's not feeling well, but if you ever reach out to the GAP or first year abroad team at CIEE, you'll be hearing back from one of us. So we are a small, mighty team, and I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk to you about this topic. Before we jump in, just a little bit about CIEE. I know some of you have probably done a summer program with us, but for those of you who aren't familiar with CIEE, we are a study abroad organization. We are a nonprofit. We are the oldest study abroad organization in the country. We have been sending folks abroad and bringing people to the United States for 75 years. We started after World War II, and our belief is that we could prevent a World War III if we just had an exchange of people, and that's what we've been doing ever since. And so I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about all of the offerings that we have for students in between that time between high school and college, and to also discuss your common applications. So I know for many folks, like I mentioned on the call, you might have done a CIEE study abroad program over the summer. Maybe you've done another study abroad program with a different provider, whatever the case may be. Tonight's session, we're going to talk about the various ways that you can talk about your study abroad experience on your common application for college. If you are not a senior and you're just here because you want to get a head start, that is awesome. And I definitely am glad that you're here joining us and getting a preview for what's to come in 12th grade. But just know the language that I'm going to use tonight, I'm speaking as if my audience is 12th graders. So just keep that in mind for any deadlines that you might have if you're a little bit younger and joining us a little bit earlier. And like I said, we'll wrap up by talking about the different ways that you could still study abroad before you go to college. So there are 5 sections of the Common App that I'm going to focus on for tonight. There's the activities list, the education section of your Common App, supplement and personal essays, along with letters of recommendation. So I'm going to go through each section of the Common App and go into this in a little bit more detail. Before I jump in, is there anyone who is not familiar with what I mean when I'm saying the Common Application? So I'm happy to take a pause and just kind of explain what I mean when I'm talking about the Common Application. Just check the chat. Okay. Great. Well, the Common Application is what we are using to apply to universities here in the US. Most colleges are utilizing the Common Application. So it's one standard application that you'll fill out for multiple schools. We will talk though about the differences. So some schools might ask for more information. They might have specific questions, but these first few sections, every school is going to require you to submit. So when you apply to college, You will be uploading your transcript. They're going to look at the classes that you took, the grades that you received. But your GPA and your classes and your test scores, that is only one aspect of your overall college application. So a lot of times I see students get really bogged down in the numbers and the courses, and that's important. And it's important to really pay attention to your grades. But that is just one part of who you are as a student, and colleges are really interested in learning about you holistically. So there's a few places where you really get to discuss and show them who you are as a student and as a person. So one of those ways is in your activities list. So in your activities list, you'll be able to list up to 10 activities that you participated in while you were in high school. Your activities list is capped at 10. So if you're someone that signed up for like every club and you do like 20, 30 things, they want this to be equitable and they say you can only include 10. So something to keep in mind is that depending on what you have participated in, you might have space to include your CIEE program as an activity. This is going to be very specific depending on who you are as a student. If you hold 10 leadership positions in clubs that you've been in since freshman year, then those are the activities that you should be including on your activities list. However, I've worked with students who maybe they are in two really rigorous pre-college programs outside of going to high school that take up all their time, and as a result, they haven't been able to do a lot of extracurriculars. In that case, if you're looking to add activities to that activities list, your CIEE program is a great place to include your study abroad experience. So if you would like to include your CIEE program as an activity, you would select it as an activity type. It would be educational. It's going to ask you to describe. You'll get 150 words to describe what you did on this experience. The way that you describe your study abroad experience with CIE is really going to depend on, did you do a language program? Did you do a topic specific program? Did you live with a host family? So you really want to use descriptive words to explain what it is that you did during your study abroad experience. Do not just say, I studied abroad for 3 weeks. That doesn't capture the scope of what you did. It doesn't explain the number of courses that you took, the number of hours that you were in class each day, the type of activities that you participated in. Did you live with a host family? You want to make sure that you're really highlighting within those 150 words that this was a cross-cultural exchange and that this was something that you were selected for. Remember when you had to, if you applied for a Merit Plus Needs scholarship and you earned that scholarship, that was a competitive process. So you also really want to highlight that this is something that you had to actively apply for and make sure that they know that you were selected out of a large pool of applicants. Just some logistical things to keep in mind. You are going to say that you participated in this activity in 12th grade. I know if you're applying to college now, you'd be like, wasn't I in 11th grade? I hadn't started 12th grade. It's the summer that you're going into 12th grade, so you would count it as 12th grade. You would select during school break because this took place in the summer. Total hours per week, you're putting 168 because you lived on this program. You were doing the cultural immersion 24/7. Weeks per year is going to depend on if your program was 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Maybe you did 2 programs back to back, so that's going to be specific to you. And then the last question that they ask is, do you want to do something similar in college? And the answer is yes. Even if you don't necessarily know if you're going to study abroad in college, I would hope that everyone on this call, if you had the chance to study abroad over the summer, is interested in pursuing cross-cultural exchange in the future. The next section from the Common App that you could also discuss your CIEE experience is the education section. So this is where you will list, where you go to high school. This is also the section though that you might include, say you do like dual enrollment with community college. This is the section where you would let them know, hey, I've also taken college level courses. If you did a CIEE language and culture program this summer and you opted to receive college credit, then you can also include your CIEE experience under your education section because you were earning college credit over the summer. So you would be selecting the college and university section of the education section. You would be selecting number one college. If you are in dual enrollment, you would select 2 because you've taken college courses maybe at, the community college or dual enrollment that you do, and you did one at CIEE. You would select Tulane University you would search for Tulane University and it would pop up. That's the school that you would select for your CIEE study abroad experience because that's who the college credit is awarded through. So you would select Tulane University because that's where your actual transcript would show that credit. And then lastly, you would select summer program because again, you were participating in this program during the summer. Whew. Getting out of breath from talking so much. Another thing to note is that when you apply using the Common App, you are going to request 2 letters of recommendation from your high school teachers. Typically, you want to be requesting a letter of recommendation from a humanities teacher. So think history, English, art teacher, things of that nature. Versus another letter of recommendation should be coming from a STEM teacher, so math, science, so that they can see holistically how you are as a learner. Your guidance counselor at your schools should be helping to facilitate or discussing how to go about requesting those 2 letters of recommendation from your high school teachers. And they will upload those letters of recommendation directly into their own Common App portal for you. However, there is the option of an other recommender. This is completely optional. You don't have to have a 3rd letter of recommendation. However, college applications are just becoming more and more competitive. So increasingly, I've seen schools say this is something that can be very helpful. It doesn't always have to be another teacher. If you have an advisor at another school, another program that you do, this is where that person could be an other recommender. In terms of your CIEE experience, if you had a close relationship with your language professor or the professor that traveled with you for your topic specific program, they could be an additional recommender. Your program leader who is with you throughout the course of your program could also be an other recommender. So that's just something to keep in mind. The list is here of who they say could be another recommender. So don't just think CIEE, if you have a coach that you have a great relationship with, faith, art teacher, peer, whatever the case may be, you can have an other recommender in your Common application. Okay, so this section is, I would say, the section that students, how can we ask the program? Yes, I would email HS Abroad explaining your request. Ultimately, and I'm glad you asked this question. So the question is, how would I go about requesting that recommendation? This comes with anything, just like asking a recommendation in real life, you are requesting, right? So the first step is you'd reach out to HS Abroad, ask them if they could put you in contact with this program leader. And it's a request, right? The program leader might say, I have to write 100 recommendations for the students I teach at my school. I don't have capacity. That could happen. But again, you can certainly request it by reaching out to CIEE, and that would be your first step. All right, so the biggest question that I usually get about utilizing your study abroad experience for your Common App is usually tailored around essays. So when you apply under the Common App, everyone is going to write what is called the personal essay. It's 650 words. You can notice on the side of the screen here that there are different prompts that you get to choose from. The personal essay usually takes up a lot of time in your junior year or senior year. You'll usually write a lot of different drafts and you'll spend a lot of time brainstorming and thinking about what topic do I want to discuss in this personal essay. Not a lot of colleges do interviews anymore. So your personal essay is really the way to communicate to colleges like who you are, what is important to you, what do you think about, how have you changed or grown over the course of your life. And so you can see from the essay questions, that there's a broad range that you can choose from. You can discuss an essay question very similar to the question you had to answer for CIE's scholarship application around like overcoming challenges. What do we learn from challenges? That's number 2. And so sometimes students want to discuss their CIEE experience for their personal essay. I do a separate workshop that the ambassador program hosts with me. So check your emails. This specific workshop will happen later this fall. I will say that in my experience, more and more, I would recommend not necessarily writing about your CIEE experience for your personal essay question. The only reason I say that is because this is maybe a 3 or 4 week experience. And your personal essay is really meant to encapsulate like a bigger part of your life. Now, all that to say, you can definitely, I would say, include it, and it could be tacked onto a bigger question or a bigger part of yourself that you're exploring. Like for me, I remember like studying abroad when I was younger, and that really like opened my eyes to like the connection I had to my own personal background. My father's from Nicaragua. I studied abroad in Spain, and I really started to like see in real time like the impact that colonialism had like all these years later on my family. So that would have been an essay question that I would have used CIEE's study abroad experience to discuss this bigger thing about myself, if that makes sense. A place that it's really, really great to discuss your CIEE experience, though, would be your supplemental essays. So more and more specific colleges will ask you questions that are specific to them on the Common App. So say I'm applying to Emory University, which is where I went to college. Emory University's supplemental essay will always take like one of their values from their mission statement, and then their supplemental question will be like, how have you embodied this value in your life so far? So supplemental essays are great because some of them are super specific. They'll ask things like, tell me about a time that you learned something, not for the sake of a grade, but for the sake of learning. That is a great question to then discuss. Learning about marine biology on a CIEE program for 3 weeks, the course that you were taking was not going onto your transcript. It wasn't something that you were taking in order to get this good grade on a test. You were doing this program because it's something you're actually passionate about learning about, and you got to learn about it in this really unique setting where it was completely immersive. So my advice, just from my experience, is to really, really think about how your study abroad experience can be utilized for supplemental essays. A lot of times too, supplemental essays will ask questions that are very common in the personal essay. So a good example would be, tell me about a time that you overcame a challenge. That's a great space to discuss like overcoming a language barrier, being like a fish out of water on your study abroad experience for your supplemental essay, and then you could talk about, something personal from your life for your personal essay. So some common essay writing tips for the Common App and just in general. And if you're really interested in like learning more about how to improve your writing, I'd really pay attention to the updates and emails for that essay writing workshop that we'll have later this fall, where we'll spend an hour literally just doing exercises about these topics. But one is really focusing on sensory details, whether you're doing your Common App or your personal essay. Just keep in mind that the person that's reading your college essay, they read so many in one sitting. And so by the 20th, 40th essay, they're all starting to sound the same if you don't tap into sensory details. So an easy way to think about this is show, don't tell. So don't just tell me that you were anxious or nervous to meet your host family. Put me in the scene. What were you wearing? What did it, was your skin like sweaty from the anxiety? What were you smelling or feeling on the plane as you were going over? Like really tap into those memories and put us in your shoes so that we are experiencing that with you for the first time. Focus on a balance of scenes and exposition. So, you know, again, like I said, putting us in the moment, that's like a scene playing out in a show versus just explaining everything that happened. Then that's just you summarizing what happened. Colleges are increasingly looking for students who have intellectual curiosity. So what does that mean? It means that you are passionate about learning, not just for a grade. You are passionate about learning and you're going to come to their campus because you actually want to learn for the sake of learning and not just because it's something that you're required to do. Along this lines, along with intellectual curiosity, you can think about explaining what happened, but it's not just enough to tell them what happened to you. It has to also loop back to like you being reflective and showing what you've learned. College is all about being put in a new and unfamiliar situation. Luckily for you all, you have been in new and unfamiliar situations because you went and studied abroad this past summer. So tap into that and really demonstrate to schools that you are going to thrive in an environment that you've never been in before. That's what they're looking for in applicants. Finally, I always tell students, this is not your memoir. This is your essay to get into college. So you do want to think about tailoring yourself sometimes. It's not enough to just tell them about maybe a traumatic thing that happened to you. It has to tie into then like your growth and your journey forward. So that's always my advice to keep in mind. How is this going to make you a successful candidate to get into their college? And then you can write your 50-page, 500-page memoir once you get in. You're going to write multiple essays for your personal statement, multiple drafts. You might start writing about a topic and be like, this is actually not the thing that I'm passionate about or that I want to write about. And that is okay. All that colleges are going to see is that essay that you end up submitting, hopefully a little bit before the deadline. But even if it's the day of the deadline, that's the one that's going to matter. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling frustrated, if it's just not working, step away from it and maybe try writing a different prompt. You would be surprised what comes out when you stop focusing on the thing that you think you want to be writing about and just let yourself write about the thing that you want to write about. The last thing I'll say, and this kind of encapsulates this whole section just about the Common App and utilizing study abroad, the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is to look at all of the questions on the Common Application as an opportunity. Remember that colleges are really going to condense you down to the questions on this application. So if your whole application is only focusing on this CIEE experience that you had, it's not a good application, especially if you're a student who plays varsity sports or is in the theater club or volunteers after school or holds a part-time job or is really active in their faith community. The whole point is that the application should be holistic of who you are. So if you spent your personal essay talking all about your study abroad experience, your supplements should highlight the other experiences that you've had. That way you're being a well-rounded applicant and it's not leaning towards just one activity that you've done, when in reality, a lot of you have done so many different and diverse things while you were in high school and even before that. Whew. All right. So before I jump into our pre-college study abroad opportunities, I want to pause and see if there's any questions about anything that we just covered. I've been checking the chat and I don't see anything. Awesome. So if you are an alumni of CIEE summer programs, I'm sure you might have heard a little bit about the other opportunities that we have, but as seniors going into college next year, there are opportunities for you to study abroad again. And I want to make sure everyone on this call is aware of the options that we have. And if this is something you want to pursue, I want to make sure everyone has the tools to be able to follow those next steps. So we have our first year abroad program, our gap year program. And then you also have the opportunity, if you wanted to do another summer program, you are eligible to do that in the summer after you graduate from high school. So you can do another summer program for 3 or 4 weeks. The only difference with the summer program is that you cannot apply for another need-based scholarship. So there would only be the academic merit scholarship, which is 10% off, along with your alumni discount. So at max, you could receive 20% off of the cost for another summer program. I'm going to talk mostly about first year abroad and GAP because those are programs that you're not familiar with. But if you have questions about high school summer, I'm happy to answer those as well. So our gap year and first year abroad locations are on the screen now. As you can see, we run our pre-college programs all over the world. We're mostly focused though in a few countries in Europe, Costa Rica, we're in Australia and Japan, and then we also run a program for gap year students in Morocco. So some key differences between gap year program and first year abroad programs. So our first year abroad program is an opportunity to take college courses at one of our international study centers. So once you graduate from high school and before you go on to that 4-year university that you want to attend and graduate from, you can take a semester or a year with CIEE and earn college credit. You're earning that college credit through our college partner, which is Dean College. So you are a fully enrolled full-time student at Dean College, earning credit through them. However, you are living and taking those actual classes at one of our international locations. What's great about this is that you can utilize financial aid for this program through Dean College. So we would have you apply for FAFSA. So if you're receiving a Pell Grant or a Stafford loan, you could use this towards Dean College. This program is also eligible for something called the Gilman Scholarship, which is awarded through the State Department, which is an additional avenue of funding for this opportunity. You would earn 12 to 13 college credits per semester, which is the same as being a full-time, fully enrolled student taking 4 classes out of college. And then if you wanted to return to the US and keep going to Dean College, as long as you're in academic standing, you could just graduate from Dean College in 3 or 4 years after returning from first year abroad. But if you have other plans, you want to apply to your dream school, maybe you're already accepted to your dream school and you've just deferred your attendance for a semester or a year, you could go on to that school that you're interested in applying to and your credit would transfer to that school. Program fees, I'll talk about a little bit further on, but typically first year abroad without financial aid is still more affordable than paying full tuition costs here in the US for a first semester of college. In addition, we have our gap year programs. So first year abroad, you're earning college credit, you're taking college courses while you're abroad. Gap year programs are very similar to our language and culture programs where you are living with the local host family and your classes that you're going to are local language schools. So you are learning Spanish, you're learning French, you're learning German, you're learning Italian, you're learning Arabic, you're learning Japanese. That is your focus while you're on a gap year program. You're fully immersed with your local family and you also will participate in cultural immersion activities with the CIEE Study Center and the other college students who are there on their study abroad experience. So some quick things to note about eligibility for both of these programs. You have to be 18 at the time that the program begins. You also have to have graduated from high school by the time the programs begin. Those are the 2 biggest eligibility requirements for both of these programs. Gap year, you cannot be more than 1 year out from your high school graduation in order to participate, and gap year has to happen before you go to college. Once you enroll in college, you can't do a CIEE gap year because you would be a full-time college student. I'll have the price cost for gap year on the next slide. Similarly, with first year abroad, you cannot go on to your college. First year abroad is taking place after you graduate from high school and before you go onto your 4-year university. You can only have taken a semester of college classes. So for example, if you do dual enrollment and you're earning college credit now in high school, it can't be over 1 semester of college. So think 12 to 14 credits. And you need to have a GPA of 2.7 or higher for first year abroad. For gap year, you don't have to have any language experience in the location that you want to go to. And with first year abroad, there is no language requirement because your classes are all completely in English. You are just living in Japan, for example, or London. And then just some terms I use: first year abroad and gap year abroad. Like, those are the programs, but most of our students actually just do a semester. So don't think that you have to do a first year, like a whole year. A lot of students really will do the fall, and then maybe they get admitted to their college for the spring. So they need something just for 1 semester. And just something to keep in mind, if you're going for a full year in a gap year location, you will have to apply for a visa. CIE will help you with that. But if you're a first year abroad student, you will not be applying for a visa. So if you want to do a full year, you'll have to select 2 different locations so that you don't have to have a visa. Okay, so for those who are asking about cost, I want to be very upfront about cost because that is a big part of studying abroad, and I don't want there to be any secrets about if I want to do this, like, is this possible? Currently, for gap year programs, there is no financial aid and there are no scholarships. So you can see on this bullet point that a gap year semester program can be as little as $16,250, but it can be as much as $18,250. It depends on the location that you go to. So for example, Japan is much more expensive than, say, going to a location like Morocco for your gap year program. And again, there's no financial aid available for gap year or gap semester. For first year abroad, the tuition price ranges from $16,800, which would be on the lower end in Costa Rica, all the way up to $24,800 in a location like Japan. However, with first year abroad, this is the sticker price before any financial aid. So again, you can utilize FAFSA, you can utilize 502 savings plans that your parents might have been using to save for college because you are a full-time college student. There's also, again, the Gilman Scholarship that you can apply for. It is a competitive scholarship, but it is funding that exists. So this price tag can come down, I would say, anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000. That being said, even with that financial aid, there is a price tag that comes with first year abroad because you're earning full-time college credit. So those are 2 things that I really want to flag and be very upfront about with both of these opportunities. But if funding is something that you know you're going to need in order to study abroad with a program like this, first year abroad is definitely the program that you should be researching and finding out more about. For first year, I'm just sorry, I'm looking at the chat for questions. So I went over the tuition for gap year. For first year abroad, yes, it is a requirement that when you apply to CIEE's first year abroad, how it will work is you'll submit an application to us. And on this slide, you'll also see there's like a letter of recommendation, your transcript, health forms, mental health history forms. All those things get submitted to CIEE, but then you also complete a very short Dean College application. And then you get formally accepted to Dean College, which is the university that's going to award you that, That's going to award you the credit that you receive from your college courses abroad with CIEE. So it is a requirement that you are a full-time matriculated student at Dean College in order to do CIEE's first year abroad. There is no option to audit classes or just take classes, as you please on first year abroad. No, it doesn't work like that. It is you're a full-time college student at Dean University. When you're done with first year abroad, you can choose to go on to Dean College, or you can choose to transfer to another college that you are interested in. For gap year programs, there is no financial aid or scholarships available at this time. It's definitely something that we are working on to change in the future, but I do want to be transparent about that. It's not the same as their summer programs where we have need-based financial aid. So here's what gets included in your tuition cost. It's going to include your housing. For gap year programs, your housing is a host family. For first year abroad, your housing location is going to depend on where you are. So for example, our students in London are in a dormitory. Our students in Japan are in a host family. So we can advise you on what the living situation would be for the particular location you're interested in. And you can also see it on our website. You get all your cultural activities, overnight excursions. Same with the summer program. Once you get there, all the things that you do with CIEE are included getting picked up from the airport and dropped off. Same with your summer programs. Flights are not included in the cost of tuition. That is completely up to you to book, but we will support you and let you know which airport you should be flying in and out of. We provide visa support while you're there. I think a lot of students think I don't need to do a gap year program. I could just go off and travel all by myself and I don't need to pay a program in order to do that. And I think what you're getting with a CIEE gap year is you're getting the study centers to support you during your semester or year that you're abroad. Anything can happen when you go abroad. And so it's really helpful to have the local staff that you all got to meet there to support you throughout the experience. You're also getting the support of a cohort, so the other gap year students. You're also getting the support of the college study abroad students who are studying abroad at that same location. So you'll get to do your cultural activities with other college students and you won't be out there on your own. Let me see, I have another question in the chat. Are emergency medical expenses covered or does travel insurance only deal with transportation? So you would get enrolled in the iNext health insurance, which is very similar to what you had over the summer. If you studied with us in the summer, that would be your medical insurance. You pay upfront, but then you get reimbursed through your iNext insurance for anything medical related, including medical emergencies. iNext does not cover anything with transportation. So CIEE doesn't provide any type of transportation insurance. That's something that you would have to book separately with your airline if you're booking your flights on your own. So here's a good side-by-side to think about the different ways that courses take place on these two programs. So the easiest way that I think about it is that first year abroad is my freshman year of college. I'm just doing it in an international location. So you're going to be taking 100 level courses that are going to fulfill that general education requirement. So think, intro to business, intro to statistics, intro to sociology, for example, intro to literature. And the goal is, again, so that you're receiving those college credits, you're receiving those classes while you're abroad so that you can transfer on to a school that you want to when you return to the US or to keep going to Dean College. Gap years programs, it has the word gap in it for a reason. You're kind of taking a pause, you're taking a break from your academic workload from high school and college, and you're just focusing on cultural immersion during that time. So that's why our students during gap year really focus on becoming fluent in the language that they're learning for their semester or year that they're abroad. We talked already about homestays, but just for folks who might not be familiar, CIEE host families are an integral part of our programs. This is how we really believe like so much of that cultural exchange can happen. Students will receive their meals at their homestay. Wi-Fi is included in their homestays. Language immersion is like another great part of it, especially if you're doing a first year abroad program where you're not necessarily learning Spanish. If you're living in Spain, you're learning your 4 courses that you've signed up for. But if you get to live with a local host family, then you're still getting that exposure to the language and learning that as well, along with your college courses. And all of our homestay families are carefully interviewed, background checked. A lot of our homestay families have been doing this for a long time and are extremely excited to work with our CIEE students. So here are some upcoming deadlines. If these two programs that I just discussed are of any interest to you, I'm again assuming that everyone on this call for the most part are seniors. So I know many of you are in the thick of applying to schools, making your plans for next year. But if this has piqued your interest, just know like this is something that can be one of your options for next year. So if you would like to study abroad on first year abroad, our fall early deadline is coming up in December. Think about it as like your early decision deadline. It's not binding, but it is helpful. We can let you know pretty quickly if you've met all your requirements on our end. So the fall early deadline is going to be December 1st. Then the final deadline is going to be May 1st. And that May 1st deadline is great because maybe you don't get some great news this spring. Maybe you got into all the schools, but the one that you really, really, really wanted to go to, and you want to take a pause. You want to transfer, you want to apply to that school again next year. First year abroad timeline fits in to allow for students who may be having to make some other plans after hearing back from some of their colleges. Again, maybe you're not ready to go in the fall, maybe you need to take a pause. We have our spring deadline as well. So you can make a decision later on in August or even as late as October of next year. And then same for gap year, you can see our deadlines below. Our gap year deadlines are much later because it's a much shorter enrollment process. But again, gap year is a great option, especially for students that really feel like they've done a lot in high school and they really just want to take a pause before going on to that four-year university. And then just one thing to note about our policy with traveling and being on first year abroad and gap year programs. Can't have any parents or visitors in the first 2 months that you're there so that you can really acclimate to the program. And you will be allowed to travel on your own because you're 18 and over. It's not the same as being on a summer program where there's a lot of supervision because you're minors, but you would just need to let the staff know where you're planning to go so that they can support you should anything happen. So what comes next? Everyone on this call is hopefully applying to schools at this time. I hope that our discussion about how to talk about your CIEE experience was helpful and that you have a few ideas about how to incorporate it in your application for this year. If you're interested in potentially studying abroad before you go on to college, some important next steps are knowing those deadlines that we discussed, going onto our website. I'll have a slide right after this where you could just go directly by looking on your phones. But it's going to be really important, especially if you're interested in first year abroad, to be paying attention to those deadlines because they're very strict and we really will need to make sure there's enough time for you to apply to Dean College and get your acceptance from them to make sure that everything is good to go for your first year abroad program. And then gap year programs, again, we have deadlines that are much later in the spring and even in through the summer. So just keep an eye on gap year programs if that's something that you're interested in. Oh, I feel like I just talked so much. So again, that QR code will take you directly to our application page where you can open an application for first year abroad and gap. Honestly, even if you're not sure if you want to complete the application, opening an application is a great way to let us know that you want to hear more about these programs. That way Ariel and I can schedule a call with you, figure out if this is a good fit. So that's really the best way to let us know that like this is something that you want to learn more about. We also have our own email. You can always email us here. We have our own phone number, our own line, so you can always give us a call. But yeah, I'm really excited that so many of you joined this evening, and I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions that you might have about our programs or just the Common App in general. But thank you all and have a good night. If you don't have any questions, feel free to log off.